We are fighting a war. Not a war of conquest, not the war we were made to fight, but a war for the oaths we made and the blood we shed to make the Imperium. We will never see the end of this war, but if we can bring that end a step closer, our deaths cost the enemy 100-fold, then the future will remember us. The civil war of the Horus Heresy required many acts of deception and cunning to tip the scales of power. No force in the galaxy could hope to challenge the Imperium's might during the height of its influence, and for the rebellion of the War Master of Chaos to succeed, the Lupercal orchestrated a complex combination of betrayals, alliances, and pacts with malevolent beings to achieve his first great victories. For today, we shall elucidate a battle fueled by mutual hatred and bitterness between the sons of two of the Imperium's most estranged kinsmen. The Void War of Stone and Iron. The Battle of Phal.
Do we obey the Primarch because we know him to be right? Or do we simply because he is our Primarch? And in the end, are those two facts truly one and the same? Or are they not?
During the initial outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the majority of the subjects of the Imperium were blinded to the impending betrayal. Loyal sons of the 3rd, 12th, 14th and 16th Legions fell in droves during the Battle of Istvan Free at the hands of their treacherous brethren. Escaping the slaughter of the atrocity, Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard Legion safeguarded the band of survivors of Remembrancers, Lunar Wolves, and civilians with the aid of his stalwart battle brothers, known as the 70. Left adrift aboard the Voidcraft, Eisenstein, within the void of space, during their traversal to the Throne World, their call for distress caused by detonating their ship's warp drive would be intercepted by the Praetorian of Terra, Rogel Dawn. Meeting with the Terran survivor of the Battle of Istvan Free, the news of Horus's betrayal and far-fetched tales of otherworldly beings initially stoked fury within the heart of the Primarch of the 7th Legion, nearly costing Nathaniel Garrow his life. Convinced of the War Master's perfidy, thanks to the evidence brought forth by the Remembrancer, Mercedes Olaton, though the Vigilant's anger did not subside, it now found new purpose directed at bringing judgment to his wayward brother. Suppressing his urge to confront Horus directly, Rogel Dawn's duty to relay such news to his father, the Master of Mankind, proved superior, and so the mighty Imperial Fist's fleet, spearheaded by their colossal starfort, the Phalanx, journeyed to the Sol system. Dispatching a portion of his fleet, consisting of 500 war vessels to unleash his anger upon the traitors, 300 companies comprising 30,000 Astartes would surely be sufficient in combating this fledgling uprising. Yet unbeknownst to Rogel Dawn, even at this early stage, fractures began to form within his well-laid plans. Assigning First Captain Sigismund to command the fleet, his most trusted champion requested reassignment to secure resources from the world of Mondus Oculum, following his meeting with the prophetic remembrancer, Euphrati Keeler, who warned that should he not be present when Horus inevitably reached Terra, all could be lost. Bristling at his champion's lack of resolve, Dawn entrusted fleet command to the mentor of the promising captain of the 405th Company, Alexis Pollux, and veteran naval commander, Captain Hashin Yonad, who had proven his strategic brilliance 100-fold during the years of the Great Crusade, who in turn made all haste to the Istvan system. Dubbed the Retribution Fleet, over a third of the entire Imperial Fist Legion was committed to bring retribution to the traitor legions. Yet following their traversal through the warp, without a bolter nor cannon being fired, the Loyalists suffered great losses.
We are the future memories. When our flesh is dust and our dreams faded, we will be ghosts living in a land of legends, made real only by the memories of others. What we take with us into that realm of the dead, what we are remembered for, That will be the truth of our lives.
Translating from the Immaterium at the edge of the Istvan system, warp storms summoned by the ruinous powers ravaged the Retribution fleet. Causing the Voidcraft Skeller shields to malfunction, large portions of the fleet burned and collapsed from the inside, ejecting able-bodied labor serfs and Astartes into the void as breaches tore through their hulls. Within mere hours, 200 Voidcraft fell to ruin, almost half of their original strength, and best estimates conclude that 10,000 Imperial Fists had perished, their righteous leader, Captain Yonad, among them. His protege, Captain Alexis Pollux, rescued from the wreckage of the debris. The succession of command stated clearly that should Captain Yonad fall, his lieutenant bore the right to lead the Retribution fleet. Accepting the burden of command from his fallen master, Pollux looked upon the remaining 363 warships of the fleet and resolved to not let his mentor's teachings go to waste. All knew beyond a doubt that Yonad was the finest naval tactician in the 7th Legion's ranks, if not the Angels of Death entire. Yet his most trusted pupil was young and did not benefit from the experience of his predecessor. Many of Alexis's peers scoffed at the upstart captain giving orders to men proven through centuries of war, yet knew they could not flagrantly defy the will of their fallen veteran. Reluctantly allowing Alexis to remain the most senior officer of the fleet, should the pupil of Yonad fail, even once, his kinsman would be all too eager to demand he step down from command. Ordering the fleet to muster within the File system, Alexis organized his men to conduct extensive patrol and maneuver drills in orbit of these otherwise unremarkable agri-worlds. Ignoring the advisements of his kinsmen to take the fight to their enemy, Pollux surmised that with their astropaths blinded from their journey through the warp, and losses incurred, rash actions could only lead to further ruin. Believing the traitors would surely attack their position with time, Pollux conserved their fighting strength and formed a sphere of overlapping battle groups in proximity to the world of Fal 2, as their astropaths attempted to contact Terra and the Loyalists assaulting the Istvan system. The meticulous routines and drills honing the edge of their proverbial blades, the Imperial Fists under the command of Pollux would not be caught unawares, and so it was, following the Dropsite massacre of Istvan V, their enemies struck. Perturabo was not a Primarch to whom the natural ebb and flow of friendship came easily, and, truth be told, he felt no regret at turning on those who had let his legion bear the brunt of the hardest fighting. They had stolen the glories of battle, while the Iron Warriors were mired in the broken earth of 1,000 worlds. No, his friendship was not easily achieved, but his loyalty, once won, was as unbreakable as the hardest iron. Or so he had thought, until time in taking the metal to the stone again and again had shown him that even the hardest iron can break, if worn thin enough. Following the news of the War Master's betrayal, the Master of Mankind ordered 7 legions to crush the Lupercal's rebellion. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard struck the first blow against the traitors, followed by reinforcements of the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Wordbearers, and Alpha Legion. Turning on their allies, the second wave of legions butchered the noble sons of the Emperor upon the soil of the Urgal Depression, and for their fealty to the War Master, were rewarded in kind. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, had proven instrumental in crippling the Loyalist lines during the opening salvo of their betrayal, his actions rewarded by Horus with the gift of the Thunderhammer forged by Fulgrim and once wielded by the Gorgon of Medusa, Forgebreaker. Emboldened from his victory over the Loyalists, the Lord of Iron received word from his new master of the location of his hated brother's sons within the Fal system, and set forth to exterminate them, personally. Unwilling to allow such prey to go unharmed, the prospect to humble the 7th Legion proved all too tempting to ignore. Warned by his Triarch Lieutenant, Warsmith Forex, that the Sons of Dawn had likely fortified their position. The warsmith of the Second Grand Company, Berossus, surmised that in all likelihood the Imperial Fist's first captain, Sigismund, must be in command. Though his pedigree as a swordsman was unquestionable, Sigismund's middling skill as a naval commander and proclivity to charge into the fray could easily be exploited. Siding with Berossus' assessment, Perturabo's fleet made with all haste to the Thal system, and in their ignorant assumptions made their first fatal mistake of the campaign. Commanded by a Primarch aboard his own personal Gloriana-class flagship, the Iron Blood, the Iron Warriors struck alike to a hammer as they arrived within the Thal system. Sundering the Imperial Fist's vessel, Hammer of Terror, within moments of their first volley, mere seconds after, 12 of its compatriot Voidcraft fell to the guns of Olympia. The Grand Cruiser of the 7th, Sula, sought to enact revenge for its fallen kinsman, yet could not hope to face 6 destroyer warships of the 4th as they tore its body apart, alike to a pack of ravenous wolves. The Crusade and Legate were vanquished by 24 Grand Cruisers and battle barges of the Iron Warriors, assembled around the vast capital ship, Contador. 16 of the most prestigious craft of the Retribution fleet had been destroyed, with no losses to their enemies, causing the Imperial Fist to scatter as the Iron Warriors picked off further prey, one by one. Perturabo's plan to destroy the fleet piecemeal once staggered was working. His assumption that the Sons of Dawn were unprepared, fueling his ego and assurance of his strategic brilliance. Yet now it was time for Captain Alexis Pollux to prove his mettle against the Lord of Iron. The Oath of Stone confronted the ships of iron, its guns firing upon the Grand Cruiser, Sveno, until its prow burst into flames. Rallying at the sight of the first kill made against the Sons of Olympia, the Imperial Fist fleet closed on the Iron Warriors. The Oath of Stone incurred the wrath of the Lord of Iron, yet its mark had already been made, its last defiant act ramming into the carcass of the Sveno, strengthening the resolve of the Fists. Whilst Perturabo ordered his men to scour the fleet for signs of Sigismund, Pollux's flagship cruiser, Veritas, aided by a wing of destroyers, laid waste to the Grand Cruiser, Calibos. Now it was time for the Iron Warriors to pay for their arrogance.
Try and reach Captain Tyr again. There had been no word from Tyr since he launched his assault on the Iron Blood. The green-eyed signal officer was bleeding, half his face glossed in fresh blood. But he nodded and moved his fingers over his lectern.
We have a signal, Lord.
The signals officer was speaking into my ear via my helmet vox. A distortion-racked voice filled my ears. Fleet Master! Tyr was shouting. I could hear a grating sound, like hail on a metal roof. It was the sound of gunfire ringing on his armor. There is word from Terra. We are to return immediately. I heard a chop of static, and a sound like a hammer striking a cracked bell. I have given the order to withdraw. Pull your forces back and...
To where? Pull back to where?
Laughter edged Tyr's voice. I looked at the battle projection, at the rune representing Halcyon, trying to get clear of the center of the Iron Warriors fleet. I am not retreating, brother. I am going forwards. I am going to kill our enemy. He had always been headstrong, reckless even, and he never liked me. I smiled at that moment. Good luck, my friend, I said. For a second, the only answer was the rain patter ringing of Tyr's armor. And you, Alexis, he said, and cut the link. I blinked, for a moment, looking into the memory of Helias's eyes, as he prepared to let the abyss take him.
Reaping the benefits of their long monotonous toil of planning and training, the Retribution fleet had survived the grueling first strike of the Iron Warriors, and would now repay them in kind. Snapping back into formation with incredible speed and efficiency, the Retribution fleet went on the offensive, forming clockwork overwhelming strikes before scattering and falling back to once again reform. Whilst larger vessels drew fire from the Iron Warriors and teased them from their formation, its smaller contingents attacked, slowly peeling layers from the amassed strength of Perturabo's fleet. Unprepared to counter such impeccably drilled and practiced maneuvers conducted by such a clearly capable naval commander, the Iron Warriors began to realize that these defensive strategies bore none of the hallmarks of the legendary Sigismund. Captain Amandus Tyr of the 14th Company took to the fray aboard his vessel, Halcyon, blazing through the holes torn through the Iron Warriors' lines, supported by its sister craft, Unity and Truth. Carving through the Lord of Iron's fleet, though the Iron Warriors heavily outnumbered their forces, the Imperial Fists were killing 2 or more of their enemies for every one of their losses. As the Halcyon gutted the battlecruiser Dominator, Captain Tyr sighted the Iron Blood, and following the loss of the Unity, resolved to undertake a suicidal gambit. Relaying news to Pollux that Perturabo himself was commanding the assault, despite his valiant combat against the son of the Emperor, it would be nothing short of hubris for Pollux to believe himself capable of slaying a Primarch. Knowing the ensuing attrition to eventually turn again to the favor of their enemy's superior number, Pollux placed 50 ships under the direct command of Captain Tyr and ordered them to attack the Iron Blood. Hurling the ships under his command to a direct boarding action of the vessel, though Captain Tyr knew his mission to execute the Lord of Iron to be folly, he would regardless not allow the fleet to be routed. With no hesitation nor fear, Captain Tyr and 53 of his surviving brethren of their daring maneuver confronted the Lord of Iron within his bridge. Slaying the dreadnought bodyguards barring their path to the Primarch's throne, of those that had infiltrated the flagship following this duel, only a handful remained. Death was often the price of victory, and few knew this better than the Praetorians of Dawn. And so it was that these valiant souls drew up arms against the hammer of Olympia. The Terminator armor-clad veterans of the 7th Legion swarmed the Primarch of the Iron Warriors. Yet as each strike of Forgebreaker crushed its intended target, it would not be long until it left Captain Tyr bleeding and broken at the feet of its new master. Meanwhile, the Retribution fleet had devastated the lead vessels of the Lord of Iron's fleet, the distraction of Captain Tyr allowing for their chance for reprisal. Ordered to return to the throne world by Rogel Dawn via astropathic message, a fortuitous calming of the warp storms surrounding the Thal system facilitated their withdrawal. Putting duty before personal glory, though further opportunity remained to cripple the 4th Legion at the expense of their own forces, Pollux ordered his men to fall back. Realizing their enemies to be retreating, the Iron Warriors hounded the smaller vessels attempting to escape. Yet actions made, such as those of Captain Iago, preserved many of their number. Aboard the first Voidcraft of the 7th Legion, to leave the safety of the Sol system during the expanse of the Great Crusade, the Lacedaemon, Captain Iago sacrificed his life, his crew, and this venerated bastion of his legion's legacy to allow for the escape of his brethren. Many followed suit as the remainder of the fleet fled with all haste during the second wave of retreat, as the battle turned into a slaughter. Content to strike their enemies in the back as they fled, the Iron Warriors fired every available gun battery at their disposal. Alexis's flagship, Tribune, clashed with the Contrador, abandoning its wounded shell as Pollux and his 30 remaining men boarded the Contrador and began to claim it as their new means of escape. The Tribune's engine sears detonated its plasma reactors, claiming the lives of both Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors, unable to retreat via its teleportarium. Supported by attack craft salvaged from the wreckage of their carriers, the Imperial Fist descended upon the Contrador and slew every Iron Warrior aboard. The Retribution fleet was gone, yet many had survived due to the sacrifice of the pious and dutiful scions of the Praetorian. Silence followed the messenger. The click of her staff echoed through the corridors as she approached the planning chamber. Figures pulled back before her, their eyes following her steps, their whispered conversations stilling as if they could sense the weight of the news she carried. 4 gold-plated custodians flanked her, and black sentinels followed in her wake like armored mourners. If Rogaldorn had seen the approaching procession, he gave no sign. Vadok Singh was outlining his proposed fortification of the Imperial Palace. The war mason paced amongst the broad pillars, perfumed smoke puffing from his mouth as he sucked on his long-stemmed pipe. Sigismund watched Armina Fel and her escort pause on the threshold. The Astropath brought her hand up to the empty pits that were her eyes. Pearls of moisture glittered on her cheeks. She is crying, he realized. Beside her, one of the custodians brought the butt of his spear down 3 times on the stone floor. The sound of the blows rippled through the pillared chamber. Dorn raised his head slowly.
"There is news,"
he said in a flat voice, and looked at Armina Fel. For a moment, Sigismund thought he saw an unreadable expression flicker across his father's face.
"It is all right, mistress. Please tell us what you must."
The woman's lips were trembling.
"There is word from Istvan, my lord."
She took a ragged breath. Dorn stepped forwards, his black robes falling back from his arms as he reached out. He gently raised her face until her empty eyes looked up at him.
"Mistress,"
he said softly,
"what has happened?"
Armina shook herself, poise and strength returning to her features, as if some of Dorn's stillness and strength had flowed into her. She began to speak, her voice the monotone drone of precise recall.
Imperial counterstrike massacred on Istvan, Vulcan and Korax missing. Varys Manus dead. Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion and Wordbearers are with Horus Lupercal.
Nothing moved in the chamber. The black sentinels and custodians stood like statues of jet and gold. Vadok Singh simply stared at Armina, the ember in the bowl of his pipe cooling to grey ash. For a moment, Sigismund felt nothing, as if what he had heard had stripped all sensation away. A Primarch, dead. 2 lost. 3 legions gone, and 4 gone from friend to enemy in the space of a handful of words. This is it, thought Sigismund, as she showed me. This is the true beginning of the end. If 4 more legions can turn against us, then why not more still? They shall come here, and here we must stand, and stand alone. He realized that he was shaking, taut muscles vibrating under scarred skin. For a second, he wondered if it was fear, if that long-dead emotion had returned to him after so long. Then he recognized the sensation. It was hate. Hate so bright and focused that he could almost see it. Let them come. Here my father stands, and I will stand with him. Dorn's hands fell from Armina's face. His eyes were black holes in a facade of stone. Hard control radiated from him, like cold from glacial ice. He looked at Sigismund. For an instant, Sigismund thought he saw a reflection of his own anger in his father's eyes, a flash of rage, quickly hidden.
"Find any remnants of the new betrayers that remain in the system."
Dorn's voice was a hoarse growl.
"Use whatever and whoever you need. Take them or destroy them as you must. Do it now, my son."
Sigismund began to kneel, but Dorn was already turning back to Armina. The Astropath flinched as his eyes fixed on her.
"Get a message to the Retribution fleet. They must return here immediately."
Armina swayed, as if the words were a storm wind.
Lord Dorn, we have no word from them.
She swallowed.
They may have reached Istval before the massacre. They may.
Her voice trailed away as Dorn took a step closer.
"If you have to burn through 1,000 Astropaths, you will reach them."
Dorn's voice was low, but it seemed to fill the room.
"Bring my sons back to Terra."
The Retribution fleet had suffered many casualties during the Void War, and whilst the Tribune had been ruined, the captured Contador remained, its crew half dead and scarred, both within and without, yet despite the odds, escaped the wrath of the Lord of Iron. Those who refused to aid the Imperial Fists in commandeering the vessel were put to the sword, and despite the defection of many of the mortal crewmen, many starved or turned to madness with exposure to the Immaterium. No record can truly calculate the amount of time the Contador spent within the tides of the warp. Yet if the 7th Legion are revered for anything, it is their stubborn defiance and refusal to surrender. Corpses of the Son of Terra, Inwit, and Olympia littered the void of Thal. The husks of once proud starships now little more than scattered carcasses of their once proud glories. Salvaging the armor of venerated champions of the Praetorian within the Iron Blood, the 4th Legion wasted no time in stripping the fallen of their panoplies. The Cataphractite Terminator armor of Amandus Tyr, claimed as a trophy, remained in the possession of the Iron Warriors, destined to be housed within the stronghold of Isengard for millennia, until its reclamation and restoration by the Imperial Fist Chapter's 4th Company during the 41st millennium. The single largest fleet of any legion of the Angels of Death had been sundered, and only fueled the bitter rivalry between these architects of war. Despite escaping annihilation, the surviving members of the Retribution fleet, once spat from the warp during their tumultuous journey to the Throne World, found themselves to have been directed far from its domain. Obscene numbers of voidcraft, weapons platforms, and star fortresses bore the markings of the vast empire of the 500 worlds. Pollux and his men had been cast to the realm of Ultramar. Soon the domain of the Ultramarines would be cut off from the wider Imperium, contained within the cage conjured by Erebus of the Word-Bearers Legion, the Ruinstorm. Their mission to convene with the assault of Istvan V had failed. Their fleet had been obliterated, and yet, despite such grievous losses, the Imperial Fists had bloodied their now most hated foe. The Iron Warriors had grown conceited following their slaughter earned through deception, and now their own vaunted Primarch had been humbled by a captain of his hated brother's sons. Victory for the Imperial Fists was never possible during the Battle of Thal, yet regardless of their calamitous losses suffered and overwhelming opposition, their honor had been preserved. For much of what will be remembered of this naval engagement is that no matter the strength of a traitor, the resolve and ingenuity of the loyal sons of the Imperium shall always find strength in the righteousness of their cause. Tyr stood, breathing hard. He looked up at the waiting doors. They looked like they could survive a kick from a Titan. He turned to the remainder of his cadre. There were 14 brothers in Terminator armor, another 30 in void-hardened iron armor. Too few, he thought. Far too few. But was any number going to be enough to kill a Primarch? Then the doors began to open. Tyr turned, his eyes locked on the widening split in the rough iron. The doors peeled back into the walls with a sound like the inhalation of a metal god. He could feel the hairs on his neck. Something buried deep under his gene forging and training told him to step back from the dark opening, to run. Behind him, his brothers began to move. Bright lines of tracer fire split the gloom. Tyr began to charge as Perturabo rose from his throne to meet him. Chains spilled from the Primarch's layered warplate as he stood. Rounds sparked from the rivet-covered armor. His face was bare, his eyes oil black. His hammer came up with him, its haft as tall as Tyr, and its black head crawled with power at its master's touch. Tyr was 5 paces away. He could feel his muscles bunching, his heartbeat slowing to a low, focused rhythm. Behind Tyr, his brothers followed, firing as they came, lighting his path, caging Perturabo in fire. Tyr gripped his mace with both hands as he swung it above his head. "For Dawn!" The shout began as the coiled power of Tyr's strike unwound. The Primarch stood still, clad in iron, and cloaked in detonations. Perturabo spun the head of the hammer low, and brought it up in a curved arc. The blow hit Tyr as his last step fell. The hammer's head crumpled his armor, and crushed it into the pulped remains of his flesh. This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The valor of the Imperial Fists during the Battle of Phal epitomizes the greatest virtues of their creed. Patience is a characteristic easy to ignore, for it rarely is rewarded with glory, and though sacrifice is honorable, it can all too easily be wasted. Duty is the fulcrum to which these virtues are practiced, mastered, and implemented. For it is the balance between these two virtues which is the key to achieving glory.